Islam is growing, Muslims are growing, alhamdulillah, mashallah. But why are we still so weak as an ummah? And
It's pretty much a lack of knowledge, and it feels like, yes, we have the internet and we're having so much access to information faster than ever before, but it's a double-edged sword, because unfortunately, because there's not as much restrictions there as you would find yourself in a traditional madrasa, it feels like anybody can be like a sheikh or an ustad, all you need. And as a result, I feel like it's become creating these platforms where, unfortunately, movements like the Salafis or the Wahhabis or the Avandis are taking in young, vulnerable, new converts to Islam, and because they're not getting that like foundational education in the Deen that we're blessed to receive at Medina, it's creating these divisions that are weakening the Ummah.
Hasina, do you want to add something to that?
Why are we weak? I would say there's like going back to what Kevin is saying. Yes, we are dealing with I would say enemies within and when enemies with outside. So what I mean by that is you're dealing with your own nafs. So struggling, anybody, whether you could be the most religious person in the world, but you always are struggling with your own nafs desires, right? So that's a big struggle to deal with. And then, we have to be completely honest. Islam is a religion that a lot of people don't want to see excelling, because it's the only religion, I would say, in the world that stands firm on whatever it is in the book. We're not trying to be completely liberal. We're not trying to be completely conservative. We're saying we're going to stand firm, and we're not going to let these other outliers try to change this firmness. So we are in a lot of other areas, we are being attacked, and that is hurting us outwardly. So I would say that does have a big effect, especially on the youth, or especially someone that's already not that headstrong in, or already being easily influenced. It's going to have a big impact. I mean, I have nieces and nephews, and I'm worried about, even though I went to public school all from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade here, I went to that school. I'm like, no, my niece and nephews, they're not going to public school in this country with everything that's going on.
It's the whole new world.
I feel that same way. I used to, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Because it's crazy how I was even telling, I would say from when I went to high school and when my sister went to high school, she's like, 6 years younger than me, how much things changed within that 5-year gap. And now, of course, with my nieces, they're going to be going in a couple of years too. How much has changed in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And this is I'm just at odd. Why would I want to intentionally expose my niece and nephews to that kind of environment where you are taking minds that are easily influenceable minds, and putting them in an environment where they're seeing teachers, they're seeing counselors, they're seeing principals, so they're seeing people in positions of leadership that are telling them, oh yes, this way of lifestyle is fine, oh yes, that way of thinking is fine, oh yes, this ideology, mythology, completely normal, there's nothing wrong with you, you're completely fine. And they're going to be in that environment for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. That's not going to have an effect on an influential child. Come on, that's going to have an effect on them. Even I would say when I was a student going to public school, of course liberalism had an effect on me. Of course feminism had, again, to all these isms from liberalism, feminism, whatever, these, even conservatism, if you're going to another, they have an effect if you're being in that environment for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and then you're coming home to a family that's saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do everything you see outside is all wrong. Everything that we're doing home is the only right way, and you're only spending 4 hours interacting with your families, and then the rest of the night you're going to sleep. Then 8 to 10 hours you're spending with the outside world. That's going to have an influence. So
this basically brings me to my next question, which is the most important part of our conversation, I would say, is because now we're going to talk about the future of our ummah. That is the youth. And you guys are in a youth, alhamdulillah, mashallah, and you are involved with people who are younger than you, I would assume, especially because of the affiliation with an institute where you see, especially Medina Institute, that's where I see a lot of youth involvement. Alhamdulillah. I love that place. My son loves that place, mashallah. So tell me, you kind of touched a little bit on the challenges youth are facing. You can expand on that definitely, and add to that by telling me where the youth stands with Islam. Are they interested in learning Islam? Are they interested in bringing it, incorporating it in their lives or not? Are they willing to change their lives according, and I'm talking about the trend, I'm not talking about the change, because
Mhm.
it takes time.
Yeah.
So I would like you to share some of your experiences, or feedback, how you feel the youth is nowadays.
Sure. If I'm starting with my personal experience and stories, I grew up in the 90s, and then here I am right now. I would say, unfortunately, a lot of the people that I grew up with, they grew up in a Muslim household. They grew up with the Muslim culture. They grew up with seeing their parents, practicing to what they knew, right? To the level that they were aware of, or what they saw being practiced back home, and they brought that over here. A lot of them have left. And when I say left, they say, yes, I grew up Muslim, but I can't see myself practicing that religion or teaching that to my kids. And a lot of times when I go back and have these conversations, because these are sisters that I grew up with, or these are, friends that I grew up with within the community. These are people that I saw as kids growing up into adults and being married and becoming parents themselves. I think a lot of times we have mixed religion and culture in a lot of different scenarios, so they themselves don't have a good understanding of what Islam is, because a lot of what they know is more culturally or more ritual, again, things that they have idolized into what Islam is. So I think there's two things that we have to do. I think we, if when I mean by we, is people that maybe are in positions of leaderships or positions of where they're trying to say, hey, I want to contribute to being able to spread the deen more. We have to do, I think, like a better job of, when we spread Islam, teach Islam with love. I think that's really, 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 really important. Like, teach it with love and compassion. Don't teach it like, Islam says this is halal, this is haram, this is makruh, this is, because that's just, I feel like that's just pushing people away, like, even more insanely. And then I feel like for the people that say, okay, you know what? Yes, I do want Islam. What can I do better? I think what Kevin said is really important in regards to, I think it starts with knowledge, like knowledge. And when you're giving knowledge to people, you have to teach it with love and compassion. Like, you have to use hikmah, like wisdom. Like, if I'm a woman that's not wearing a hijab, and or if I see, sorry, a woman that's not wearing a hijab, and the first thing I feel the need to do is say, oh, sister, you're not wearing a hijab. What you're doing is wrong. Da 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 da. Like, if I'm just going to lecture on that, and not, just be a good Muslimah to her, and, like, treat her with generosity, kindness, compassion, you're going to push people away. And I feel like I saw that a lot with my generation, and I'm hoping the next generation is not going through those same things, because especially, I would say, being a female Muslim coming from a Desi background, I saw a lot of females like leave. And Islam gives the most rights to women, but they
Yeah.
experience the complete opposite. So that hurts me a lot, because that's what they saw from a cultural standpoint, but they didn't understand that's not what their religion is about. But unfortunately, that's what we did as Muslims. We showed them that, and that's what they internalized. And I'm not going to say it's 100% our fault, because they could have went and learned too. You should have went and learned before you just said, oh, this is what a religion is. But that was their experience, and that experience had hit them so hard that it just closed the door for them to even want to go learn what the truth was.
I agree with you 100%. And I'm going to share a little bit of my experience here growing up in Pakistan, in a Muslim country, and being born in a Muslim family. Uh, but, you don't see Islam being practiced the way it's supposed to be. It actually, I was never interested in Islam.
Yeah.
I didn't know why I'm a Muslim. I was standing in my salah and breaking my salah, thinking that I am just pretending, and it's so fake. I don't feel anything. Until, Alhamdulillah, I was able to separate the culture
Yeah.
and Islam.
Yeah.
And I would go on to say enough to this much, that my mental health was deteriorating just because of that influence. And I started to love myself only when I realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves me. the way I am. And he has, created me beautiful, amazing, talented, and all of that. Alhamdulillah, which was not uh, how I was raised. SubhanAllah. So that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the purity of that connection makes a whole lot of difference in your Islam and practicing Islam. I'll go on, let Kevin add to this, inshallah. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so I guess I take from the wisdom of other converts who I've met over the time, over the 2 years I've been Muslim, those who have been like Muslims for like decades rather than years. They would say, and I also believe that it's not always the fault of the previous generation, because there's also the possibility that, well, actually there's the reality of back then there just wasn't as readily accept readily available material to learn the Deen. But as many of my fellow convert mentors have told me, back in the day, especially the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, like you were lucky to find like an English translation of the Quran, or like books by the scholars like Imam al-Ghazali, Imam Shafi. Like one particular brother I know who's been Muslim for 30 years. He's a white American. He grew up in the Bay, and he grew up in the 90s. Hip hop culture similar to how I grew up. Streets and all that. And when he became Muslim, he had to learn primarily from books, because there just weren't the madrasas and the imams over at the masjids. Like they did their best, but they weren't as grounded in the traditional Islamic sciences either. Where back during the time of what people would like to call the Islamic Golden Age, knowing this stuff was like essential for even the most basic Muslim. Like you didn't have to learn this if you wanted to be a teacher or something. You had to learn this, period, at whatever you were doing. This was expected. Nowadays, it's like they like to say you have a choice, but I feel like
it's an option, yeah.
And that's become, and unfortunately, that little bit of freedom, I wouldn't say freedom, but like that little bit of leeway, I would like to say, has created like the sense of heedlessness. Mm-hmm. And again, because we're in a different country where you speak a different language, for people who don't have a background in knowing the Arabic language, or knowing languages like Urdu or Arabic or Pashto, or like whatever native language in the native Muslim countries, it's going to be hard to like learn if you going over there. And again, back then, we have more English translations of scholarly books now, alhamdulillah, but back then, insanely scarce. Mm-hmm. And so it's like getting anything from like Imam Ghazali or Imam Nawawi or Imam Shafi or Abu Hanifa, the great scholars of Islam. We now are getting greater and greater access to English translations, and that's a blessing, mashallah. But back then it was insanely difficult. So you have to be aware there. And also people would rely to, I feel like this is still something especially relevant today, and especially living in America, in a non-Muslim country. We're importing our imams from Muslim countries where like they're able to handle the community requirements in their home country because they grew up in the culture. But here in America, you're living in a non-Muslim society, you're living in a non-Muslim environment, and Muslims here, we're facing challenges that you would not necessarily expect in a Muslim country. Those temptations are not as strong over there as they are here. So it presents unique challenges, and thus requires an awareness of the environment. And what most people don't know is that a Muslim is obligated to understand his environment. How else are we going to like combat the difficulties if we don't know the difficulties, if we don't know the culture, if we don't know what we're getting ourselves into? Yeah. And so there's unfortunately a lot of the imams who are imported from the Muslim countries. They either show an inability or an unwillingness to understand the American culture, and thus the environment that they're trying to guide their community into. And without that, they try to explain things from like their perspective that they gain from living in their homeland, and they'll do their best. Like I honestly believe they are doing their best, it's just it's not enough. It's it does their experience doesn't necessarily speak to the experience here, and thus many scholars like Imam Suhaib Webb, who I had the honor of meeting once, he there's I could share a lecture he's saying that we need more American bred Muslim scholars and imams, people who understand this country and the challenges that come with living in this country, especially from a spiritual perspective, and how to, and thus they would have like the experiences to provide more fruitful advice and more fruitful hikmah and guidance for how to combat ourselves here, how to handle living in a environment that is not completely Muslim when we're walking in it. And I also like from what Hasina said, how we need to teach the religion of love. That's actually one of the big sayings in Medina: compassion, education, and illumination. We're we're studying the Deen not to be indoctrinated. We're studying the Deen to be transformed.
Yeah. Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Exactly, alhamdulillah. And I would like to bring a different perspective here. And of course, it's past. I'm not youth anymore. So I'm going to share how it was for me growing up as a girl. And I'm going to bring a woman's perspective or a girl's perspective living in Pakistan. I seriously had zero opportunities there. I don't think women, it was even considered an option for women to learn their deen.
Yeah.
And subhanallah, I did not get any opportunities to learn any of the Islam in depth in Pakistan until when I moved here, alhamdulillah. And I believe that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, He gives knowledge and hikmah to anybody, anywhere. But moving to US was a source for me, alhamdulillah, and the opportunities I found here. I don't think I would have been able to find them back home. But alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So that was a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I was given the chance to learn and practice my faith as I do today, alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Kevin,
if I
sure.
may add just one last quick thing.
Sure.
We take hope in the fact that this is not the almost first rodeo with this kind of challenge. Like, I would definitely highly suggest reading up and learning about the story of this great sheikh from West Africa. His name is Sheikh Uthman bin Danfodio. You might have heard of him, you might not, but when he was becoming educated and he was learning the Deen and he was studying under his teachers, including his parents, like he was living in a society where, even though it was Muslim at the time, because of political instability and then internal tensions and opportunistic factions, it became where like the leaders were insanely corrupt. There was political and social corruption, and then corruption within the Deen itself, where unfortunately the paganistic rituals that used to exist in that region before Islam came there began to pop themselves back up, and the leaders wanting like that opportunity to gain some like material benefit, they started implementing those polytheistic rituals and those shirk elements into the Islamic practices, and it was a terrible time for that region. But through the work of Sheikh Uthman bin Danfodio, by providing unconditional love, support, and free, not unconditional knowledge to anybody who was willing to learn from him, because he learned the classical sciences straight, and he would teach straight from them. He would never innovate. He would never create a new method of learning. He would teach exactly how he was taught from his teachers and their teachers, all with chains of transmission dating directly back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So like, and that's what Medina Institute is trying to do as well. We need to go back to the fundamentals, to the sources, and that is the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. So we have an opportunity to do what multiple scholars have done. Like, I wouldn't, we could say reform, but I wouldn't like to say it's like we're creating a new perspective on Islam. We're just restoring. We're trying our best to like guide this particular region the same way Sheikh Uthman Danfodio did for West Africa, and that is re-illuminate the Ummah and then bring new people into the Ummah strictly through the way of our of our predecessors, and that's through the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, now, so you are in the path of knowledge. Alhamdulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you. Consider yourself the chosen ones. Okay. Not everybody gets this chance. Really. We are lucky. We are blessed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in our hearts, that we desire that knowledge and we do what it needs to be done to acquire the knowledge as well. Alhamdulillah. So, and it's not even, since we all know that it's a basic requirement of every believer to learn his deen, it is not even a sacrifice to hold, like Hasina, like you're holding off your work for some time. Or Kevin, if you are using the rest of your day after work to learn the deen. This is not a sacrifice. This is what we should be doing anyway, right? It's a basic requirement. So now that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you to be a student in his path, to be someone who's learning the deen in a formal way, mashallah, what is your goal in the future? So Hasina, I will specify your question more, and it's going to be specific for you, Kevin, as well, because you are a woman, and you are a certified public accountant, and you are a sister in the masjid who is around other girls, alhamdulillah. Keep all those roles in mind, and in the future you're going to be a mother, inshallah. All those roles are very important, and you are in a very, very important place. And same goes for you, Kevin. You are as a man, as a brother to other younger youth, and as a future father, inshallah. These are very, very important roles, and a husband and a wife for you. So subhanallah, how do you guys see yourself in the future utilizing the knowledge, and how do you impact the society with this knowledge? Hasina.
Sure, absolutely. I want to start by saying, for us that are born Muslims, I think, honestly, if you really look into it, we have a lot of unlearning to do with our cultural knowledge before we start learning. Because if you just let go of all that, the culture garbage, you'll just realize, whoa, okay, it's not all of that. It's this.
Nothing's left, really.
So really, that's what a lot of the sisters that I meet with and I hear their stories, I interact with them. I always tell them really honestly, and I really mean it, we have more unlearning to do than learning. And what I mean by that is just drop all the cultural stuff, all that stuff that we're taught that this is Islam. And, a lot of times it's just your upbringings and it's your cultural, but it's not religion at all. But going into it, I'm going to take Arabic studies alone. I really hope, because I a lot of times have gone to scholars in the past or teachers in the past, and I would take them a hadith in English and I would say, this hadith in English is women, da 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 da, and this is da 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 da. And you know what, my teacher, and that's when it really opened the eyes for me. He wouldn't even look at my hadith. He would just look at the what is it, Sahih, Bukhari, this number, da da da, and he'll pick it up in Arabic. And I'm like, why are you doing that? He's like, because so many times I have seen the translation being translated incorrectly, and then people taking that incorrect translation and applying that in the real world. So I'm really, really hoping that I'm able to not have to worry about translating something and go directly to the source and understanding it from the source. I think that is going to help me so much when it comes to understanding the rules and regulations and the deen itself. So I'm really hoping that I'm able to do that and complete this course with learning Arabic. So I'm able to look at the source and be like, oh, okay, when it says strike a woman, it's not saying strike a woman. It's saying, okay, like a light tap on the woman, which is a big difference than when you're translating a tap to a striking, So, just examples like that, I would say, using examples like that, where translation is just completely garbage or completely off, or it's just it means one thing in the way it's said in Arabic, and it means something else when it's translated into English. So I'm really hoping that from just learning from the class itself. And then when it comes to that's Arabic studies, I would say, right? When it comes to Islamic studies, I'm hoping that I want to refrain from using the word information. I'm hoping that it will acquire me to obtain more knowledge, where I'm able to, if I'm being put in positions of leadership, or if I'm being put in positions of community, being a community member for the board of the masjids, or any aspect of my life where I'm going to be put in a position of responsibility, or put in a position of, okay, you are going to maintain this area, that I'm able to give the accurate, best knowledge to the best of my ability from the point of what Islam teaches us. I really, really hope I'm not misleading, because I saw that from the generations before, had that deteriorated the people, had that deteriorated societies, I would say, and had that deteriorated like the women, especially growing up in our societies. And I don't want to repeat that same mistake. So I think it's really, really important that we go back to the source, learn the correct information, and then when it comes to implementing that or teaching that or applying that within our community, that we're teaching it again with love and compassion and good wisdom, good hikmah and adab. Adab is so important. Like a lot of times when it comes to teaching that to our fellow community members within a community. Being also, I want to add, being a certified public accountant, I have always had an itch to learn more about Islamic finance, because I see that issue all the time with our community as well. Like, how do I go about getting a mortgage and a loan and all this stuff when Islam says riba is haram? Like, how do I prosper in the West, with all these things that Quran is telling us not to do? So I want to get also like a deeper dive into understanding Islamic finance and utilizing what I learned in Islamic finance to be able to help the people within the people that I'll be working with on a financial or accounting perspective as well. So these are the 3 areas that I want to hopefully try to thrive, succeed in, inshallah, if Allah gives me the ability, and be able to be a helping hand for the community, because ultimately that's what I really feel like would be the best thing that I could be able to help for my community. And inshallah, if Allah gives me like a family and a progeny to give for the next generation, to be able to help my kids. Because kids, they learn from the mothers of their laps. That's their first institution. So if we're going to say, oh no, moms are not supposed to learn all this stuff, this is only for men, what kind of household are you going to be raising that family into? So I think it's really, really important that we learn that and give that to the next generation, inshallah.
Inshallah, Ameen. Yes, the role of a mother.
Yes,
I can't.
It's so important. It's so important. So I
can vouch for that.
When you said, and it really breaks my heart, because it's the same thing in India too. It's the same thing where they say women are not supposed to learn all these things. These are just attributes for the men. It breaks my heart that these are coming from Muslim societies, Muslim countries, or Muslim, majority Muslim areas. It's teaching them women don't need to have access to any of this. When in reality, I don't want to say it's more, but it's just as important for women to learn this, because they are the first institution for a child to learn. So if the woman doesn't know, how do you expect the next generation to learn all these things if you're depriving that information for the women in your society? And Kevin bringing up Malcolm X, I think he even quoted, he said that if you look at how a nation strives, if you look at the nation, look at the women. If the women are striving, the nation will strive. If the women are not striving and you have decapitated the women, or you have, handcuffed the women, the whole nation doesn't strive until you allow the women to strive. So and he brought up examples after examples after example where it's really, really important to educate your women. If you want your nation to do well, you need to educate your women. So inshallah.
Absolutely. Very crucial. Absolutely. Alhamdulillah. All right, Kevin. Be specific with all the roles Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put you in. Alhamdulillah.
So I will say, alhamdulillah, it's been quite a ride. Like, I've only been Muslim 2 years, and yet apparently it seems like I've proven myself trustworthy enough to where, like, I find myself in a lot of these roles where some people, like, I don't say this from a point of arrogance, if I am, may Allah forgive me and may Allah purify me. But it seems like a lot of people look to me as an example, and I wonder how, but I guess this stems from my ignorance where, again, I don't have a full spectrum of what it's like to have grown up in a Muslim society, or like a Muslim family, especially the type of Muslim family that doesn't necessarily have that grounding in the Deen. So, and it seems like it's weird how this kid who came here at 22, Latino culture, was eventually was at this point super anti-theist, but when he became Muslim, it's like, I guess maybe the fact of my the fact that I worked so hard to transform myself made an impression, because I now see like younger brothers looking to me as an example. But also between us, I think also the fact that I kind of like have like this, they like to say I have like this swagger around me, maybe because of the way I dress or the way I talk, but they see like, oh man, this is a brother to look to. But also because I try my best to just like embody the most basic principles of Islam, because that's how I was taught from my teachers since day one. And that's how Islam was like introduced throughout the 23 years of the Risala of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, the first 13 years in Mecca, he simply taught Tawheed. He taught us to have taqwa, to have adab, to have awareness of our actions, to be good to our parents, to be good to our children, to be good to orphans and the poor, before he started including the fiqh and the rulings during Medina, where eventually things such as the prohibition of alcohol and the prohibition of fornication. So like Islam came gradually, and that's something that I was encouraged to do as well. So like it's that consistent purification of yourself. And I would say like I'm at this crossroads right now where I don't necessarily feel like I know where my role what my role is. Like I see people like uh some people at the masjid, like their way of serving Allah is by running like our charity portions. Some are who are doing their where their ibadah is seeking knowledge, becoming striving to become scholars, people of good knowledge. Some who are chaplains, some who are community leaders, who are creating these nonprofits. So I feel like at this crossroads, I don't know what my role is, but uh, a while ago, I attended this lecture with Sheikh Tariq Al-Gawari. He gave a lot of perspective, and it was something really that impacted my heart, where where I feel like, and this stems back to how the Ummah is very confused now. We've learned how to confuse the roles, you know, where there's the three major types. Like there's the alim, there's the scholar, the person of knowledge who's an expert in this field, who devoted their life to understanding this particular topic about the Deen. Then there's the you know, the activists, the preachers, the ones who do the dawah, who give the big speeches. Then there's our traditional wali, you know, the pious person who we always see at the masjid, who does simple things like cleaning the masjid, praying a lot of the time at the masjid, giving the adhan and the aqama. And we've come to this point where we sometimes confuse dalils and walis for alim, and vice versa, where it's like we don't know who's truly the people of knowledge. We don't know who's doing the dawah, and we've gone to a plane where we're confusing so much, where we don't know who to truly go to for when we're seeking knowledge, or when we're seeking hikmah, or when we're seeking general advice or good company, like a role model. So I feel that in my case, I would like to gain the knowledge so that I could understand exactly what my role is. And maybe because of an increasing influence I see that I'm beginning to have at the masjid, try to create an environment where we have this clear separation, where it's like we don't have this like arrogance in our hearts where we overstep our bounds. You know, there are people there. The people of knowledge exist for a reason. They're meant to give the specifics. They're meant to educate us thoroughly on these subjects, and we need our alims. But not everyone can be an alim. Just like how we have our dalils who give the dawah, who give the basic messages, who get people interested and re-interested in Islam, but they're not the most knowledgeable. So we can't go to them for like the super specific advice on fiqh or what is the aqidah and stuff like that. So we need to learn how to, and then there's the wali, you know, they're good for company. They're good for general advice, but we can't look at them as alims or dalils, you know. Some people are meant to be social. Some people are meant to like be in the masjid all the time to give an example. We need clear definitions of our roles. So I feel like that's something I feel like the future of our Ummah desperately needs, so that we don't cause these like mistakes of like following the wrong kind of knowledge, because a dalil and a wali, they can be sincere, but they might give the wrong kind of knowledge. Whereas the alim, because he's not always getting to practice because he's always busy in the library studying, or he's not always involved in the community because he's in the books, he might not be the best source. They might not be the best source of like how to put it in practical terms. So we just need to know where we stand. What is our particular major role within the community? And I'm currently going through that myself. I intend to talk with my own mentors pretty soon about like, where do I see myself going? What do I see myself as a role? Like, do I want to become a scholar? Do I want to become a chaplain? Or do I want to be a regular person who just contributes a little bit to the masjid every day? I don't know, and I would like insight in how to do that. And I would advise everyone to do the same. Like, when you're in this path of knowledge, you have a responsibility to yourself. So like, ask yourself, what are you going to want to do with this knowledge? Just being a simple community member, or being something more? And there's nothing wrong with any of the three paths. All three paths are needed. We need our scholars, we need our preachers, and we need our regular community leaders. We need them all. We just can't create this confusion as to what constitutes what anymore. So I would say, wherever Allah chooses for you to be, double down on it. If you're studying the Deen, continue studying it. If you find yourself in a place where when you're thriving in a role of activism, or in a role of community leadership or community building, double down on that. If you find yourself most at peace when you're just a regular Joe at the performing the sunnahs and the nafil and the fard of Islam, double down on that. You just got to figure out your own role. And when you realize where Allah has placed you, don't fight against it, because when you accept it, you're able to find where you're best suited to contribute to the ummah.
Subhanallah, yeah, beautifully said. So let's end our podcast with a final remark from both of you, and inshallah I'll go last. Give us one advice. So throughout your lifetime, your experiences, your learning path, everything, give our youth one very important advice you would want, something you would want for your child, maybe. So inshallah, something like that. Go ahead.
I would say, I don't even know how I would start, but I would say, I know we've all heard our parents say like life is really short and your youth will fly by. And I mean, really, your life is really, really, really short. And like youth flies by like within a blink of your eyes. You're like, what? Like, how did 10 years go? How, like 5 years ago? How's my child 10 years old or 3 years old? I look at my niece, I'm like, my niece is 4. How did she become 4? Like, I don't remember the 4 years. Like, it flies by. So with time flying by, and I feel like it's just time, it's flying by much, much faster as we get, like, as time goes. Use your time wisely is like my biggest, I would say, like, I think there's a hadith on it. And actually, this is what I would probably give the advice is Prophet ﷺ said, and I don't know if I'm going to remember all 5. I'll try to remember all 5. It's, you take advantage of your health when you have good health. Use your time wisely when Allah gives you free time. I think it's retain your
wealth,
wealth, time, and something about, I think
youth.
when you're young, use your oh man.
Yeah. So the hadith goes as the son of Adam is not going to move from in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until he answers these questions about his life, his time, his health, and his wealth.
His wealth, yes, correct. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, that's really what it comes to. And we think we have all the time in the world. We really don't. We think we have our youth for us forever. We really don't. We think we have our health with us forever. Ask your elders. Before you know it, you're like, I used to be able to get up and read Salat like this. Now my knees don't work the way they used
Yeah.
to, or my
I would have
my
asked you
elbows
that.
are buckling in all these weird places. So
Are you talking about me?
no, me included. Trust me.
Look,
So
as an uncle myself, I definitely agree with the time flying because my niece in January she'll be turning 14 years old, and it was like 14.
yeah,
Like it
Mashallah.
felt like 1 minute ago she was this baby who would
yeah,
scream crying whenever someone picked her up.
yeah.
And you're an uncle. I'm the mother of a 20-year-old. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. I can't believe how fast
Yeah,
the
and my own
time has
sister
gone
turned
by.
20 recently. I was like, wow, my own little sister. Like, welcome
Yeah.
to the world of the 20s.
Yeah, it's true. Your
Mashallah.
20s, oh man, do they fly by?
I'm 24.
Fly by. That's wild.
Mashallah, mashallah. All right, Kevin, what do you want to say? Your last, remarks, final remarks,
Yes.
advice you want to give to the youth?
Exactly. So I would say, and this is not just me speaking, this is from the scholars themselves. In every book of hadith, you will find that they include this hadith at the very beginning. This will be the first hadith they mention. I don't know the Arabic, but I'm just going to say you'll find this in Riyadh Salihin or Sahih al-Bukhari or the Al-Arba'in of Imam Nawawi or Sahih Muslim. You'll always find this being the first hadith, and that is actions are based on intention. So I would advise the youth to first reevaluate for yourself, why do you seek this knowledge? Are you being more motivated to recite the Quran because you want to beat this person? Like, there's nothing wrong with competitive spirit, but I would say it's like you just want to show this person up. I don't feel that would not be the best reason to learn how to recite this particular ayah or like memorize this portion of the Quran, or like you want to give zakat simply so you can say to others, or you could just say to yourself, I paid more than this guy, I gave more than this guy, I'm a better person, and this is a book that I'm going to intend to share for the description, inshallah. It's a book that I've also shared with Sister Hasina. It's called Iktibasul Alim. It's meaning the acquisition of knowledge, and this is from the Sheikh I mentioned earlier, Sheikh Uthman Danfodio, and I'm just going to go briefly because it's like you said, we're about to finish, but he would say that there are 3 states of which people would seek knowledge. People are divided into 3 states. There would be the bottom state, where this is the state where a shaitan has taken you, where the person takes their knowledge as a pretext for increasing their wealth. So like as a cause for boasting of their status and rank. This is where, and we've known multiple other hadiths where like we're warned, where like even if you learn something, if you don't have the correct intention and you're doing this for this particular reason, Allah's going to know. He knows everything. He's al-alim, He knows what's in our hearts. And if we don't have the correct intention, even if we're like the biggest scholar in the world and we're known everywhere and everyone loves us, we could easily just fall into the hands of shaitan and unfortunately make Jahannam our home. And you got to make sure you have the knowledge for the right intentions. And so the second state I would talk about, and this is a state where it's like you're not completely lost, but you still need some work on yourself. You seek knowledge as a vehicle, so like to assist you in your livelihood in order to obtain standing among men and wealth. So like this is again another state where it shows the lowliness of the heart, and this is something that Islam, I was drilled in very early, but unfortunately not everyone is. You got to take care of your heart, your spiritual heart. If you're just doing something and you don't have that connection to it, like we've said multiple times throughout this podcast, you're just doing rituals. You're not really practicing Islam. And finally, the top rank that Sheikh Uthman Danfodio regarded as like someone who seeks knowledge, the man who seeks knowledge in order to take it as a provision, his final destiny. So that is the intention that we need to constantly make and remake in our hearts. We're like, yes, if you're pursuing something to get this, you should always be able to tie it back to obtaining your akhirah, because society's going to say, life is short, go enjoy it. But as a Muslim, we have to be of the mindset of the akhirah is forever. We need to prepare for it. So it goes back to that one hadith that you will find in any book of hadith you will read at the beginning, especially the major ones, the 6 books of hadith. Actions are based upon our intention. So I would advise the youth to ask yourselves, why do you seek this knowledge? And if it's not ultimately tying back to you wanting to be close to Allah, to be close to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and ultimately obtaining the the levels of highest levels of the akhirah, go to Jannah, to be in the company of our Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to feel the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you would need to reevaluate yourself. So that's the one advice I would give. Make sure your intentions are in order, and be aware of what happens when you have a tainted intention, and try to be aware of when you feel like your intentions are being tainted, because I have to constantly remind myself of that. Sometimes where I get scared, I feel like, oh, I start off with this intention, but somehow my heart is going here. So I need to step back and recalibrate myself. And this book from Sheikh Uthman Danfodio that was shared to me by Sheikh Hamza Perez, one of my role models in being a Latino Muslim, I got the chance to be able to correspond with him. This was a book he gave me, and it was definitely something that help recalibrate me when I was going through that latest spiritual crisis. Have your intentions in order. You have the intentions in order. You have your mind and your heart set towards Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as Sister Hasina said, everything else will be taken care of for you. You just have to make sure your mind, your heart, and your spirit are in that direction, and in everything you do. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Absolutely correct. And my advice to myself and to both of you and everyone who's listening to us, inshallah, is dua. Don't leave dua. In the path of Allah, in the path of Deen, we know how shaitan multiplies and attacks us and makes it impossible for us to stay in the path. He brings out people who should not be in our lives to distract us and so forth. So this is what has helped me throughout my life in this journey, in this path, that I've always made the dua that, oh Allah, you be my guide. You be my guide. So إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمُ. So that's why I keep asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide you, will connect you with the right source, with the right person. Or if you come across with a person who's not beneficial, Allah will remove them from your life or remove you from their life, and He's gonna take care of it, basically.
Yeah, and another dua I would recommend is Ya Muqallibul Qalin Thabbit Qalbi. Yeah, O turner of hearts, keep my heart firm upon your religion.
Yes,
Ya Muqallibal Qulub Thabbit Qalbi ala dinik.
Thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Yes, absolutely. Alhamdulillah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. So yes, dua, don't leave dua. Hold on to dua every step of the way. You need to hold on to dua, and the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be direct. Nothing and nobody needs to be between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. So this is the end of our beautiful conversation. I really don't want to end it, but it's almost an hour and 30 minutes. I was loving it, enjoying it. Alhamdulillah. I want to thank both of you for your time, for the insights, for the gems you have shared from your life, and may Allah bless you in your path of beneficial knowledge, and may Allah increase you in your beneficial amal, and may Allah make you a guiding source for others in this dunya, inshallah. May Allah accept it from you guys, whatever it is that you do, and however you, inshallah, positively impact the society, our community, and our ummah, inshallah. Ameen. Jazakallah khair to our listeners. I hope and pray that today's discussion has brought some insight to you and was beneficial and inspiring to all of the listeners, inshallah. Please share, like, and subscribe, and leave a comment. Share with us how you felt about our discussion. Share your experiences with us, your views with us. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.